Good evening. I will call our February 1st board meeting to order. Since 5:30 p.m., the board has been in closed session to consider the following: the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district, collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, and the selection of a person to fill a public office, including a vacancy in a public office when the district is given power to appoint under law or ordinance. I will entertain a motion to come out of closed session.
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second are heard. Please call the roll, Mrs. Patton.
Leong,
Aye.
Gerke. Aye. Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Wanke.
Aye.
Kush.
Aye.
Kuzminski.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes. We are in open session. Good evening and welcome to the February 1st board meeting. Our mission is to educate students to be self-directed learners, collaborative workers, complex thinkers, quality producers, and community contributors. Please call the roll, Mrs. Patton.
Board members present this evening: Kristen Fitzgerald, Donna Wanke, Paul Leong, Joe Kuzminski, Christine Gerke, and Charles Kush.
Okay, please join the Board of Education in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, at this point we will go to our good news.
I'd invite Seneca Mondini to share with the Board of Education just an update and reminder of a community engagement program we have planned for this month.
Thank you very much. Yes, this is a reminder about our Optimistic School Community program that's going to be starting, actually kicked off today. As we begin February, we want to send a reminder about the launch of the Optimistic School Community series. Starting today and for the next 3 weeks, we will post a set of 6 interactive modules that includes videos with accompanying activities and resources designed to build a positive mindset and foster social and emotional well-being for our students. There will also be 3 live virtual Zoom sessions that will highlight the themes of each week. This is a community engagement series that is designed by Sean Aker, a positive psychology expert and the author of The Happiness Advantage, to help us refocus on wellness, unity, and positivity. Recent research indicates that children learn optimism or pessimism from their experiences of success and through their interactions with parents, teachers, and other significant adults. Scientific research demonstrates that for children to succeed, it requires a positive influence to ensure their social and emotional needs are met. This research also demonstrates that people make better decisions when they are in a positive state of mind and become more successful when we are happier and more positive. The Optimistic School Community will provide invaluable tools and techniques to assist us in focusing on wellness during these unprecedented times. The series focuses on developing a resilient and positive mindset, the impact of social connections on positivity and rational optimism for well-being, building an individual and family happiness habits for self-care, and raising the level of happiness of yourself, family, staff, and students. Additionally, you may have noticed some shifts with our district logo and colors. These hints of orange serve as a visual reminder for us to focus on doing things that have a positive impact in our lives and those around us. It is our hope that our community will unite and be the spark of positivity, optimism, and hope. We are looking forward to having some fun, focusing on wellness and mindfulness, and you can please join us in this wonderful movement. All this information can be found on the Naperville 203 website by clicking the big banner on the homepage. And our first engagement session will be this Thursday at 7 p.m., and all the registration is on the website.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, at this point, we have reached the point in our agenda for public comment. The Board of Education welcomes comments from the public at its meetings. Citizens who wish to address the Board of Education should identify themselves by name and home address. Comments by individuals shall be limited to 3 minutes. If the individual is representing multiple individuals or a group, they shall be allowed to speak for 5 minutes. Issues raised in public comment will be taken under advisement by the Board of Education, but will not be discussed this evening. Issues raised during public participation may be added to future agendas or addressed by administrative staff. The superintendent is the board's designee to coordinate response to public comment and will apprise the board accordingly. As outlined in Board of Education Policy 2.230, individuals addressing the board should conduct themselves with respect and civility toward others. Individuals are free to express their criticism regarding decisions or policies, but the Board of Education requests that they refrain from personal attacks on our superintendent, Board of Education members, and administrative staff. At this point, I would like to welcome Mike Mike, I'm sorry, I can't quite read the writing. Barry? Okay, sorry, I'm sorry, it's very hard for me to read that writing. Welcome. Yes, please come forward and utilize the microphone.
I just have a very quick question. My name is Mike Berry. I live at 1089 East Gartner Road in Naperville. I'm a parent of students at Prairie, alumni at Prairie, Washington, and a high schooler at Naperville North High School. I have a question whether the board has evaluated what's being described as culturally responsive teaching standards that are currently under consideration by an administrative committee of the Illinois General Assembly called JCAR. There's been very little press coverage about these standards and the implications that these standards will have on student performance. I'm concerned that these standards will mandate teachers to advocate particular political policy objectives, will reallocate important classroom time from core subjects like math, science, to political matters that are not relevant to student achievement or to student improvement, and replace critical thinking skills that was one of our objectives here in 203, and objective standards with subjective, non-scientific theories regarding disparities in student performance. And finally, I'm concerned that these standards may violate the constitutional rights of every teacher in this state. There's no such thing as compelled advocacy of political speech or political views, and I'm concerned that these standards would incorporate some of that. Our goals in this district should be focusing on improving the academic achievement and improving the education skills of our students, not on politics. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, on behalf of the whole board, thank you for your comment. All right, now we would like to welcome Mary Beth Baskin. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Mary Beth Baskin. I live at 1641 Tulane Drive in Naperville. Hello. First, I'd like to say how happy I am that we're finally back in person in some form. However, I do feel like while we're excited about this progress, I feel like we still have a ways to go. At the last meeting, it was read, thank you. I did ask what we needed to do to get back 5 days a week in person, especially now that we're investing in surveillance testing, which is not inexpensive. The response I got back was, Naperville 203 will transition to full in-person learning when the state reaches phase 5. Currently, phase 5 is considered the guideline as a vaccine is widely available. Since it is doubtful that a vaccine is going to be widely available this spring session, I'd like to ask what other considerations are we looking at to get our kids back in school 5 days a week? The number of students and the need for social distancing seems to be a big barrier. So I'm asking, have we considered other options like obtaining more building space? We have the Alfred Rubin Community Center like right across the street. I doubt it's being widely used. I don't know if you guys are creatively looking at other things such as that. There's the libraries, there's hotels that are not being utilized. We seem to have an abundance of money right now that we could be utilizing to spend on some additional space. If we need more teachers, I'm not sure why we're not going out and getting teachers. If we need more substitutes, I don't know why this district is not paying top dollar to get the substitutes. I am concerned that we're rebating taxpayers $10 million when I think we can be using the money to get our kids back in school. I also have no confidence in the state that they're actually going to ever get to phase 5, even with a vaccine. So we continue to hear on the news that there's other, strands of this COVID vaccine out there that we don't know if the vaccine is going to protect us or not protect us. So I'd like to ask the board, have you been forward thinking, like what will happen in the fall if the state is not in phase 5? I just want to caution everybody, again, we're giving a lot of money back, which to an individual taxpayer is not a lot of money. $250 honestly won't even pay my grocery bill with what my kids eat. So I'm just, asking and encouraging you to think about the long-term game and how we're going to get our kids back in school 5 days a week. Thank you.
On behalf of the whole board, thank you for your comment. Okay, now we'd like to welcome Sarah Forster. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for welcoming me tonight. My name is Sarah Forster. I live at 1318 Brush Hill Circle. I'm the parent of two girls, aged 2 and 11. I begin this comment by thanking everyone at my daughter's school for doing everything within their power to add educational value to her 6th grade year. Even if this year is not everything we normally expect of a District 203 education, the enthusiastic teachers and staff have made this year 1,000 times better than it could have been. With assessments, summer school, and return to full-time school, I am hopeful that learning loss will stop and the fully engaged 203 environment will shine once again. Still, some potential barriers to the renewed commitment to the District 203 mission exist. Will closed bargaining sessions with NUEA lead to a permanent 4-day-a-week in-person school schedule as proposed by the nearby District 308? Will the district find ways for in-school lunch periods, as has been accomplished in nearby District 300? Will the board formally approve agreements for student resource officers through 2023, deferred by all members except Mr. Leong, as promised to do in the March 2nd, 2020 meeting? How does the board believe that the ISB cultural learning standards up for consideration in the state legislature affect our teachers' ability to teach age-appropriate, community-appropriate content to students, which violate neither the teachers' nor the students' religious beliefs or political independence? District 203 has embraced diversity. Dr. Leeks is the first representative to recognize Jewish cultural tradition in any meaningful way. She has thoughtfully considered strengths and weaknesses in evaluating Title IX. She leads a diversity committee. I am concerned with the board's lack of familiarity with the anti-racist creed of Dr. Ibram Kendi. The proposed ISB cultural learning standards premised on that creed to actively promote progressive civil action. Have you considered John McWhorter's objections to Dr. Kendi's approach? Have you considered the importance of using writings from Black women such as Broome, Morrison, Shutterfly, and Angelou before demanding that the curriculum includes Kendi's stamped? Black History Month should be a time to celebrate all who have changed the course of history, not just those who require all who don't meet Kendi's marginalized definition, including Jews, who are among the most oppressed people in the history of the world, to admit status as oppressor. Where are the values of compassion, kindness, and openness in ascribing to such a creed? The board can and should pass a resolution opposing these ISB standards. Trust your schools. Sensitive embracing of diversity is possible without indoctrination. Thank you.
Okay, on behalf of the whole board, thank you so much for your comments.
Can we ask Sarah Forster for her comments in writing so that we can address those?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, I do not have any more people who have signed up for public comment. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to address the board? Okay, then As we finish up our public comment period, I want to thank each of our participants on behalf of our whole Board of Education. We appreciate your advocacy for our children. I also want to acknowledge the many public comments that were submitted by email from many of our community members. We also appreciate your advocacy. I want to assure each public commenter, regardless of the format in which you have commented, your concerns have been heard by the Board of Education. I also want to take a minute to thank all of those who are emailing their thoughts and questions to the board. We read and review each email and value them greatly. At this point, there are times when, due to the volume of email, we are not able to respond in a timely way to each one. However, each of these emails is read and considered. We thank you for taking the time to keep us informed, and we consider you to be a vital part of the process of reflecting the views of our community. As a reminder, our designee to respond to public comment is our superintendent, and he will apprise the board accordingly. As has been communicated by our superintendent, answers to questions raised in public comment will be posted on our website under frequently asked questions. At this point, I will yield to our superintendent to briefly address a question from public comment that was submitted by email this evening.
Correct. Submitted by public comment, but also received in some email. Members of the community have expressed concern regarding the potential appearance of a conflict of interest by one of our board members who has gone to work for as a chief of staff in the for a representative in the Illinois General Assembly. We have reached out to our legal counsel as well as counsel from the Illinois Association of School Boards, both finding that there is no conflict of interest. We asked for written documentation of that. Once we have received that, we will post that on the board's page on our district website. So again, we have sought counsel from multiple sources to be informed that there is no conflict of interest at this time.
Okay, this will conclude our public comment period. All right, so we'll move on in our agenda to action by consent. Item 6.01, adoption of personnel report, and 6.02, HR imaging extension. I will entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented. Wanke.
Second, Gerke.
A motion and a second are heard. Please call the roll, Mrs. Patton.
Kosminski,
Aye.
Leong,
Aye.
Wanke,
Aye.
Gerke,
Aye.
Fitzgerald,
Aye.
Cush.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes. So we will move on in our agenda to item 7, communications. Item 7.01, superintendent staff school report.
Okay, we'll ask that the slide be brought up for presentation and the return to learn. Thank you. So as was noted by one of our public speakers, we are very excited about the current state of where we're at right now, realizing that things are going pretty well and we'd like to continue to move forward. Our report tonight is to update you on our return to learn, and our information will focus on a review of our first week of Stage 3 hybrid learning, current metrics, plans for surveillance testing, as well as an update on the distribution of the vaccine to our employees. As a reminder, our Return to Learn plan is made up of 4 stages. We are currently in Stage 3, hybrid learning. Overall, last week went extremely well. Students returning to classrooms created a positive energy as our staff welcomed their return. It was an emotional time for staff, students, and families, as we have all endured so much since students were last in schools on a consistent basis. Although schools look and feel a little different from last March, students and staff navigated our new health and safety protocols very well, from temperature checks at student arrival, to one-way hallways, to wearing masks, to socially distanced desks in classrooms. We're very pleased how our staff prepared students and families to our return to in-person learning. Many of our building administrators and teachers commented how well the return went and how reviving it was to have our students back in school. Some went on to say, "It's different, but I feel like I have my old job back." Well, it has only been 1 week. Our staff has also noted a higher level of student engagement, including those online. Schools have received a tremendous amount of positive feedback from parents, including how less screen time for students has been welcomed by students and parents, and seeing excitement with increased peer connections between our students. We're proud of our building administrators, teachers, and the entire staff for the tireless efforts to prepare for this transition. We also appreciate the patience and flexibility from our students and their parents, as a lot has been asked of them as well. We remain focused on a full return to in-person learning when we're able to do so safely, but are also working on making our current stage even better based on observations from week 1. At all levels, we know With time, we know our educators will become more and more proficient, providing high-quality learning experiences with both in-person and online students. At the elementary level, we will continue to refine our midday dismissal and arrival procedures to reduce the time it takes for parents who are picking up their students from the AM session, while also maximizing the prep time teachers need between sessions. At the middle school and high school level, educators and students are adjusting to balancing the in-person and at-home learning environments. Teachers are collaborating to work through how to effectively use the live stream tech and structure the block for both environments to ensure all students feel connected to the classroom environment. Each day they are growing and trying new things that is increasing the effectiveness of teaching and learning in both settings. The overall feedback at all levels is very positive, and our teachers are implementing new practices daily. The celebration of having students back in the buildings motivates our staff to work through any challenge that may come our way. At this time, Dr. Igo will update on our COVID dashboard.
So we are so excited to have students back in our buildings. We will continue to monitor the health and safety metrics so that we can make adjustments if necessary. As you can see from the chart, all of our metrics fall within the green area, indicating that we have minimal concern with the spread of the virus within our schools. The community positivity rate of 4.53% has continued to trend down and moves from the moderate range to the minimal range. Our PPE and cleaning supplies continue to be sufficient. We have begun COVID screening last week with our staff and are happy to report that we had less than 0.5% of our samples return with a presumptive positive finding. As we would all expect, our students have risen to the occasion and there were no concerns with following the face masks or social distancing mitigation strategies. And the number of staff unable to work continues to remain low and our staffing levels are adequate. We've updated the COVID dashboard to align with our new metrics. You will see a chart each week like the one on this slide that details where we stand with each of the metrics. We will continue to post weekly the number of students and staff who have tested positive for the week and the number that is quarantined. We will also be adding the number of COVID screenings we did each week and the overall positivity rate of the samples and the number of students who are experiencing COVID-like symptoms. As you can see, we are well on our way to full implementation of the COVID screening program. As I mentioned, staff began the COVID screening last week. While overall it went well, there were a few bumps along the way. As always, we're making adjustments to our internal procedures based on what we learned from our day-to-day implementation. Students will begin testing this week, tomorrow. We would like to remind all of our participating families to carefully read the instructions and or watch the video prior to providing their sample. It's critically important that all those steps are followed, that barcode label is placed vertically on the test tube to ensure that all samples can be run. We have seen an increase in our enrollment from our last Board of Ed meeting. We have an additional 384 staff members, bringing the total staff participation to 1,654 staff members, and our student enrollment has grown by 1,274 students, bringing the total to 3,386. Overall, we have a 53% of our eligible participants are signed up for the program. However, we are still processing the new enrollment forms that we received last week, so we anticipate that this number will continue to grow. While our enrollment has increased, we are still not at the 70% participation rate that we would like, particularly for our students. We will continue to have schools send weekly messages to our families, encouraging them to participate, and will engage with social media campaigns that will connect the community to our website and videos that highlight this important mitigation strategy. Given the importance of in-person instruction and the low transmission rates within our schools, we are not recommending mandatory testing at this time. Should we see an increased spread of the virus within our schools, and it looks like it will have an impact on our ability to continue with in-person learning, we will then revisit the need for mandatory testing.
We're in regular contact with the DuPage County Health Department, and by regular, I'm talking about several times every week in conjunction with the DuPage Regional Office of Education and currently Jewel Osco Pharmacy. I should add, we are also in communication with Edward Elmhurst Health Services, actively pursuing a vaccination plan for this district. Like many other districts in this area in DuPage County, we're in a position where, probably to call it charitably, I'd say it's somewhat haphazard as far as communication and distribution. But we are actively pursuing the possibility of bringing vaccination protocol to our district. We completed a vaccination willingness survey At the end of the week before last, we have about 80% plus willing to get us to receive a vaccination. We also know that as time goes on, people are affording themselves access to vaccinations through other means as well. I'd encourage anybody that's watching this, whether you work here or not, to actively pursue accessing vaccination through as many channels as possible. I'm talking about connecting with DuPage County, connecting with Mariano's, CVS, Walgreens, Meijer. If you know DuPage Medical Group, I'd frankly take a shotgun approach in terms of like trying to increase the probability of access for all employees as well as community members. We'd like to anticipate an on-site vaccination program if possible, and then I think I pretty much covered all of it. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize one point on what Dr. Knowlton has just shared about us and our readiness. Dr. Knowlton we are in position and ready to have an on-site administration of vaccination. It's just the availability of the vaccine itself. And what we heard from the DuPage County Health Department even today, they don't know how many doses they're going to get next week. And so it's kind of, and then who the state makes available to private providers as well. You have heard about some school districts in our county who have had access to it. And as Patrick was saying, that's somewhat haphazard in luck, that a local provider has had availability of certain dosages of the vaccine. We are ready. It's just having the vaccine available to us. So as part of communication, and moving on to the next slide, Rich, we will be communicating with our staff who are eligible. But a key point that Dr. Knowlton made, and I know we had several staff members have access and get the vaccine over the weekend through their own providers. Please, if you have access to the vaccine, don't wait for us. We're going to try to make it convenient for our staff on site to be able to get it. But if you have access to it through another means, you're encouraged to do so, because that'll just help with our plan as well when we are able to move forward. But communication will remain a priority for us during these times. And as I mentioned in my message to the community on Friday, we'll be sending different types of critical message alerts to our community, and we need everyone to continue to read their emails thoroughly. I know at times it can seem overwhelming, the amount of emails and information that we're sharing, but it is important that you read them thoroughly. The messages include all community message, and FYI to the building students and staff that there has been multiple COVID-19 cases in the building. A close contact message, and that message alerts individuals who have been in close contact with a confirmed case of COVID based on contact tracing. Low risk messages. Those messages alert individuals that were in contact with someone with COVID-19 but are not deemed a close contact. And then also our surveillance screening message. Student staff participating in the surveillance screening who come back with a positive clinical finding will get a text message to stay home and follow-up communication from the school health office for students and human resources for staff. So again, I want to thank everybody for their time and attention to these messages as we move forward. At this time, my team and I would be prepared to answer any questions from the board.
Okay, thank you so much for that review. It has been so exciting just to see the kids go back to school. So it's great to see the pictures, and I know just hearing the excitement from our own children, it's very exciting. So thank you very much for that review. Okay, questions from the board? I see Christine.
Dan, can you clarify, at the beginning of the presentation, it was in conjunction with the slides with the pictures. You said that teachers reported more engagement. Is that like attendance for the kids who are at home? Is it just like more engaged online, like with the screen time? What did you mean by more engagement?
So I'm going to invite other members of my team, but I think a general sense of excitement about the transition into this in person, also just the new dynamic for those that are online. So Mr. Freund, if you want to start.
Sure, it's really mostly anecdotal. Lots of teachers commenting about students who maybe previously had their screens off or weren't necessarily attending for full periods, now engaged again, and that's really across both groups. They've commented about students that are in person, and obviously their engagement goes up when they're in person, but our online-only students as well. I think seeing their peers in school, seeing some forward movement has been a psychological positive for a lot of folks, including our students.
Did you have additional questions? No. Okay. All right. Questions from the board? Charles.
So my question is on the level of surveillance testing. So, Dr. Igo, you mentioned that we're starting to see increases. I think you quoted a number of about 3386 in terms of students. And what percentage of students is that again? Relative to how many are receiving in-person instruction?
Sure, it's about 50% of our students are currently enrolled.
So it's about 50. You mentioned that there's still some forms that are still to be processed, so you anticipate that number going up.
Correct.
Okay, so, and again, just to remind everyone, the target rate we're looking at is around 70%. That's where we'd like to get to.
Correct.
Right, that's a minimum number we'd like to get to, right?
It's what we believe would be a good best practice for us.
Okay, recognizing that, again, this is just one of the mitigations, but albeit a very important one, what are the other things that we're going to try to do? Because I'm extremely concerned about the fact that the number hasn't gotten to that number yet. I know we're just getting back in, but there seems to have been quite a bit of opportunity, given how this has been communicated, given all of the communication that's gone out, the opportunity for people to ask questions. At what point is this become enough of a concern that we need to take additional action?
Sure. So I think there's a couple of things in there. And that one is I think we need to celebrate the fact that last time I was here, we were at 30% of our students, and we're currently at 50%. So we did see a rather large jump. Not, again, I'm not saying we're where we want to be, but we absolutely are seeing our students and our families kind of responding. We're going to continue to have those conversations with our families. We're asking our schools to reach out. We're going to do a social media campaign that allows and kind of connects our students back to, and our families back to the website and back to our videos that we've got that really explain why we need to do this and what's really involved and how we'll maintain their confidentiality. In our weekly community messages, we'll also continue to have those conversations and make sure we remind people about how important those things are. In regards to the making it mandatory, we've really had some conversation about the importance of having our students in person and that there's value in that. And so when we make something mandatory, what we're saying is that the students who don't do it are not allowed to come in for in-person instruction. And so we want to, before we do something like that, we want to weigh out all of the pros and cons of that and make sure it's a step we absolutely must take. And so currently, we are not seeing high transmission in our schools. We are not seeing the virus moving freely across our schools, and that means all the other mitigation strategies we're doing are continuing to work. Before we really say to a student, you cannot come for in-person instruction, we would want to make sure that, or we want to be, because we're seeing the virus spreading within our schools, it's starting to impact our ability to remain open, then now it's time to have a conversation about making something mandatory. But until then, we want to really rely on kind of the voluntary participation as well as continuing to monitor the transmission within our buildings.
Yeah, if I can just piggyback, may I just piggyback onto that answer first, please? Thank you. So again, I think you, Mr. Cush, hit it very well at the beginning of your comments. This is just one of many mitigations. Also, today during our call with the DuPage County Health Department, I have shared they've been somewhat, hesitant to be supportive of endorsing strategies regarding surveillance-type testing. They're coming out with some new guidance and new position on that too. So we will continue, like we have with all of our metrics and all of our mitigation strategies, evaluate how effective they are and if we need to look at them differently.
Okay. If I could follow up, another follow-up question. So what I heard was that the DuPage County Health Department is going to, they're coming out with some potential strategies, so we'll continue to stay in contact there. It's not out of the question that we could get to a point where mandatory testing might be recommended, but at this point, that's not where we are. I'd be curious to understand, for those who have not opted in to the testing, what are the concerns that you are hearing as to why they're not? From what I understand as you've described the process, it seems fairly simple. We're providing all the materials, all the information, all the instruction. So what are the concerns you're hearing as to why people are not opting into the testing?
I think just families might be concerned about the idea that they're turning over their saliva and how is that connected and what does that mean over time. I've answered many questions like that, and although we can talk about The fact that we are able to maintain privacy, I think for some people that just feels uncomfortable for them. And so they aren't ready to necessarily take that step. There's, I'm sure, many others. Those are the ones that are just coming into my inbox.
And so once that concern's been expressed and you've provided assurance that it is confidential and that there's no privacy concerns, or that there's strategies being taken to make sure that those privacy concerns are addressed, does that seem to comfort the individual who may have made that comment?
Sometimes, in full transparency, sometimes it does, and then they agree and they're ready to roll and they sign up. And sometimes they say, I appreciate the information. I'm still not yet ready to make that commitment with my family. And we have to respect people and kind of meet them where they are.
Understood. Again, I just recognizing, again, as Superintendent Bridges outlined, and you've outlined, it is just one mitigation. I do think it is an important one, though, and I do think it helps us have additional data. We've received several questions, several inquiries from the community as to what's it going to take in order to maintain. And I think that we need to do everything we can do to encourage everyone to help to participate in that, to provide us with as much data as possible, this being an important piece of data for us to have in order to maintain some of the, maintain the plan where we are, and to continue to move forward to that point of being able to get everybody back into school, and so that we can continue to get positive comments that
Absolutely.
Mr.
Please
Foynt mentioned.
I agree with you 100%. It's an important strategy. But I also don't want to lose sight of all the other pieces and how they all come together when we have to make decisions.
Understood. I just want to make sure we continue to stress to the community that, we're all kind of in this together, and the more we can help to participate, the better. Want to make sure that we're addressing folks' concerns about the testing, but it seems like the administration is doing a very good job of addressing those concerns and making sure that privacy is maintained, if that seems to be the main issue. So I'll continue to ask, but I'll leave it for now.
Okay. Is that all your questions? Okay. All right. I see Donna.
Thank you. So at the last meeting, we were assured that our reimbursement of $10 million to our community would not hinder our return to in-person. That's still the case, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So I guess my concern, because I've heard from some people in the community too, is just our students with special needs, IEPs. We are working, and I know I've asked this before, but now that we're in hybrid, I want to ask it again because it's a different avenue. Are we working to get those students in more than the normal amount of time that other students are?
Our IEP teams are doing a fabulous job. I just created a new word. Fabulous job. So Dr. Iger, you want to talk about that process?
Yeah, absolutely. So all of our IEP teams are meeting and carefully monitoring progress, as they do every year, but are definitely more attuned and making sure that our students are making progress. If they are not making progress towards their goals, they are absolutely increasing their in-person instruction time. So there are many students that I know that are coming to participate not only during their kind of hybrid general ed time, but then are either at the elementary level staying in the afternoon or vice versa to receive additional services and supports, or at the elementary or the junior high and high school coming on opposite days. So again, that's a very individualized decision based upon that student's IEP goals and how that student is responding to instruction. But our teams are very, very attuned to that and are very quick to make changes when necessary, when kids aren't making progress.
And then is that extended to our other students who maybe don't have IEP or special needs, but are also struggling or needing some extra support?
That is yes. Jane, Chuck.
The short answer is yes. I don't know, Chuck, Stephanie, or Jane, if you want to talk a little bit about the process the teams at the schools use to identify needs of kids.
Yeah, sure. So at the high school and junior high, we're continuing with that process of looking at students who may be struggling grade-wise, attendance, connectivity, and those students are also being invited into the building more often than just the regular AB schedule.
Yeah, and I would echo that for our elementary students, keeping in mind that we have just really completed 2 days of in-person for some of our third, fourth, and fifth graders. So we need to get them acclimated and certainly ramp up from there. So, but we do actually have many students that are in beyond the 2.5 hour sort of half-day model.
I have a few more questions, but I'll yield the floor to another colleague.
I think I see Jill.
Yeah, thanks. Very excited that the students are back in hybrid mode. I know mine have had a good experience so far this week. Now that we are back, I want to ask about a different type of testing. Can you talk a little bit about the plan for rolling out the assessments, the MAP, the IAR, as well as bringing those students who are currently online in for those tests?
Sure. So once students have attended for 4 weeks, we're going to start, I'm going to say mid-February through mid-March, we're going to go ahead and do our MAP testing in reading and math, K-8. Our expectation is that all students that are in hybrid attendance participate. We'll also extend an invitation to remote students as well to participate. There's been a lot of conversation about when that might occur, whether or not that can be done on a Monday or if that can be done sometime in the afternoon, things like that. So we're looking at possibilities there. The accountability season begins really mid-March through mid-May, to be honest. That would include the Illinois Assessment of Readiness, the IAR, the DLM, the Illinois Science Assessment for 5th and 8th. And then it's our hope that once we conclude the accountability testing, we can squeeze in one more MAP assessment so we can kind of have a data point somewhere around mid-May to the conclusion so we can see where students are as they finish the school year. In April, we also have the high school assessments, the PSAT for 9th graders, 10th graders, and then the SAT as a graduation requirement as well. So that schedule has been circulated to all schools, and we took a look at, we had input from administrators as well as staff around how we could make this possibly work. It's a lot of testing in a pretty compressed period of time.
Is that it? Yeah. Okay. So I will I know you had some more questions, but I'll just go with a couple and then we'll go back to you, okay, and anyone else. I'm glad to hear about the process in terms of priority students and what we're doing. I know that was a similar process that we utilized over the time period, just the last couple of months. Can you tell us a little bit about the success of that and how you felt about it in terms of, did it work to address the needs for students?
Chuck, Stephanie?
Yep, so I think you're asking about our prioritization process from before we brought students back in.
Correct. So, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, we had an increase in the number of students that we were seeing in person over time. So, as we were kind of back and forth between, decisions and such in the fall, I think that to some extent kind of put some pause on decisions about increasing the number of students. But as we took that adaptive pause in October, we saw a steady increase week over week with students coming in, and I think that was a testament for how well that was working for students. And we knew that as time has grown, more students were struggling, more students were disengaged, more students were needing that connection with their teacher and connection with the peers. So again, I think it was really multifold there to see why those students were coming in person. But our teachers really made lots of comments around their ability to assess at a deeper level. Certainly that is for an elementary student, and I suspect also for a secondary student, far more effective face-to-face than via Zoom. So although our teachers have been assessing all the way through informally, having them in person allowed them to really dig into levels of understanding, learning gaps, really understand what students needed. So even if they were coming in for a half a day or a couple hours a week, our teachers were then more able to really meet their needs even virtually because of having that assessment information that they were gaining in person. That's what I'd start with.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Chuck. And also at the junior high and high school level, it was really an all hands on deck kind of a situation where they took data, their counselors, social workers, our teachers, PLCs, administrators were all looking at pieces of data on a daily basis, whether it was attendance, grades, engagement, all of those things that were reaching out to parents, reaching out to kids, going to pick kids up, bring them in, make sure they were on the bus and getting there more often than they needed to, or where they were asked to do. And although grades aren't the only benchmark we look at, first semester is finished with high school, and the number of failing grades has not increased since we were in person. So, like I said, not the only benchmark, but it is certainly one that we would look at closely, and it is virtually the same as it was before.
That's super exciting to hear. I mean, it's exciting, everything you said, frankly. Just what from Mr. Freund, just talking about how that really worked even to assist in the remote learning, not just with the in-person learning, but to make the remote learning better. And then to hear from Mrs. Posey about the F grades, that our efforts to really dig in and support students, whether it be in person or remote, that those were successful. That's very exciting to hear. Thank you for sharing that with the board. I think as well, I think it's exciting to hear that we're continuing that process so that we're all very excited about the 2 days per week. Don't get me wrong, very excited, and our students are as well. But just getting that, if there are students that we continue to see that are going to have concerns, that you have the ability to utilize this process, which has worked. So thank you for that. On that note, I know that we continue to hear from our community just that, what are those factors that are keeping us from the 5 days? And can you just, I know that we had that question last time, but for those that have public commented this time with that question, if you could just review kind of those things from our state, which are really our difficulties in that whole question.
Yeah, I'll I think there are many strategies, and I'll invite Dr. Igo, Chuck, and Stephanie also to add in onto this. But in terms of requirements regarding contact tracing, limitations of groups of students in one area, social distancing that must occur. Some districts, where maybe we have heard that more kids are in more often. Well, in most cases, a significantly fewer percentage of those kids opted for in-person, and so that is something we'll continue to monitor as well. But it's not just one thing. I think it's multiple things. And again, following the recommendations from the Illinois Department of Public Health in local guidance, it's in the size of our schools, the space available to us that we have to be able to continue with the guidance that's provided. We're about where we can be right now, and anything we can do as we move through this wider distribution of the vaccine, perhaps more students ending up opting for at home or whatever, we'll continue to be flexible. I mean, we said that from day one, that this has to be responsive to the conditions that we face, and so we'll continue to change. I don't know if there's anything that anybody else would want to add.
I think you hit all the really big important things as all of those things, but I guess I would say, as we did to make the decision to come back, we've been very closely monitoring the research and paying attention.
Right.
And when we learn and understand something new, we can make a change. As of today, the research and the guidance is continuing to say 6 feet of distance at all times, mask wearing, and we're at our capacity.
Thank you. I know that something that is in the education dialogue right now is just concerning remote learning and academic integrity. Can you talk a little bit about the steps we're taking to ensure academic integrity for our students when they are online and in person, of course, but online?
Jane Willard will respond to that.
Okay.
Yes, we have some of our tools in place, monitors our integrity. It really does also come down to our digital citizenship that we employ with our students. When we're face-to-face, we have those conversations as we do online. Our PLCs are recognizing in some instances, we have some more secure assessment opportunities, and our PLCs are working toward that. But just like we do with the integrity and face-to-face, we have to really empower our students to make those great decisions. But our tools that we do have in place will monitor, for example, how long a student takes on a task. So we know if a student's just going right through the assessment, that raises a red flag. And so our teachers will come and check in with the student, to check for understanding a different way. So they're working on it, and we seem to feel like we're in a good place with that, and our tools are assisting with us.
Glad to hear that. I know that's just a dialogue that is nationally, just one of those factors, and I wanted to inquire as to the kinds of steps that we're taking to preserve our integrity. Okay, I don't see additional questions, so I'll go back to Donna.
Thank you. So I know we've talked, and importantly so, about our students. I have a shift in questions about our staff. So can you share with us how we continue to support our staff, what new things we maybe came across or addressed this week, and just how, it's an adjustment for them, and it's important that we help them. I know you all know that, but it's important that we help them because they are the front line of who's going to have the biggest impact on our students' education. So I'd like to hear a little bit about what we're doing to support staff, especially in the new circumstances.
Sure. So we worked very closely with our building leadership and our learning support coaches. Our learning support coaches really have a pulse on where our educators are and where their comfort level is with practice. And so we brought them in kind of to understand what we needed to develop. So we developed in collaboration with IT, first and foremost, let's get our tech streaming down. Let's get them proficient to be able to use that tech streaming. Then we focused on what's the best practice when we look at a blended learning environment, when we have some students online and some students at home. That's different. So when we think about our traditional blended learning that we felt it was innovative 4 years ago, that looks different than it does when you live stream. And so one thing our teachers have done, and you could hear it from our Twitter chats this past week, and even just from our own staff, what they did on Tuesday was different than what they did on Friday. They were growing and engaging students differently because some of this is a trial and error and a collaboration with each other. And so our learning support coaches, our building principals, and just their colleagues are supporting them on, hey, have you tried this? Have you tried that? We also have designated some afternoons for our staff to really focus on in their PLCs in targeted conversations around best practice in assessment, going back to your question about integrity, and then also in the online just delivering of content and feedback from our students. Our teachers are constantly asking our students, what's working? And so it's been 4 days. Tomorrow will be our 5th day in our live stream balance. So they will continue to increase their practice.
I just want to add, communication with the associations that represent all of our employees is also very critical. We are doing our best to try to listen, to empathize with concerns that our educators and our staff may have regarding just doing their job, so to speak, right? So we're taking that input, as best that we can, trying to be flexible where we can. Myself, Chief Human Resources Officer Bob Ross, Chief Financial Officer Mike Francis, or I have regular meetings with association leadership to make sure that input is getting to us. And so that we're trying to, we have areas where we want to kind of improve our internal communications to make sure that we're getting the information out, but we are really trying to do our best to listen. And we understand what the concerns are.
Thank you. I love the piece about the feedback from the students, because I think that's critical. So thank you for, that was not part of, like what I had thought of. And so I appreciate that tremendously. I'm done. Thank you.
Just a quick thing, how exciting it is to see our staff tweet, just following some teachers and just seeing their excitement. And then hearing it echoed from our own children, just about how exciting it is to participate in person, different than on Zoom. There's those different strengths. So my last question is just with regard to social and emotional learning, our new program. So I know that we had a little bit from Mrs. Mondini about our new program. I know we had so many parents that talked with us about the kinds of things that they were seeing with their students and how to support them. And so how do parents, how do you recommend in terms of, I know there's a fantastic video from Sean Akers on our website, which I really highlight to our community in terms of talking about the real depth of what we're doing socially and emotionally with this program. But how would you recommend families utilize the modules and the sessions that we have coming to best support their family and their children if they have, you know, a sense that this would be something that would be helpful for their family?
Either one of us could have.
Anyone,
jumped in.
anyone.
Because we're very, all of us are very excited about this. We have a lot of resources on our website, and our buildings will also be sending out some additional resources. But I think first and foremost, our families need to log in, need to get in, and even, you know, there's two things they could do. You could, as a parent, go through it first because they're not super long.
Yeah. Okay.
Become familiar with it, and then it depends on the student's age, and then engage your student. You know, our high school and our junior high students could probably watch that right along with the families. I think the biggest part is taking those modules, watching those modules, and then having family dialogue. You know, family dialogue is so important that we understand where our students are, where we are as parents, and having that open communication, because open communication is going to increase that social emotional feelings around the families. Want to add anything?
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd add in there is that really the modules are set up to provide very small pieces of information, really actionable steps that everybody can take to help them see what's happening around them in a different light. And so if we can take that, I would really encourage our parents to think in those really small steps and then practice each of those steps to the best of their ability while they're having conversations with students.
I would only add to that to ensure that the doors of communication are open back to the school, that if a parent does go through the module, has a family conversation, they're either reaching out to a classroom teacher, a counselor, social worker, or building administrator to really kind of talk about the challenges that they're having with their children and ask for additional support and resources. Because again, we're excited about the work that we have going on here. And listen, this is not about just all of a sudden I'm happy and everything, you know, the world is wonderful, right? It's a process about understanding the importance of wellness, mental health, taking care of yourself, being resilient. It's really, it's bigger than just that idea of putting a smile on your face, right? It's about learning strategies to help you deal with stress, anxiety, and how to get through difficult situations. So I encourage people to have those conversations, but then take advantage of additional resources. We have a nationally recognized social emotional learning program already in place, right? And so this is a part of that. Again, we've been talking about strategies and mitigation strategies. This is just another new part that we think is responsive to needs that we see in the community and within our staff right now.
Thank you for that explanation. I was very encouraged just watching the video in terms of the research that he had done in communities with really, you know, difficult circumstances. You know, the Boston bombing, the school shootings, the fact that he has been in a part of those communities, and that this work is coming from those types of situations. I think that's very encouraging to me in terms of the level of stress that they're anticipating, that they feel like this can be helpful for. Because I know this has been a really stressful time for many families, and it's just, I'm glad that we as a school district are able to offer this resource to families as one tool. You know, certainly recognizing that I thought that was fantastic to talk about the communication back to the school and what we already have ongoing and the resources there, but just to sort of open up that communication for some individuals who may be looking for it. So thank you. Okay, any other questions from the board? All right, so that will conclude our return to learn.
Actually, Kristen.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Sorry.
Yes.
I did have
Please.
one additional question. And it gets back to kind of piggybacking on something that Donna was asking about in terms of the staff. Dr. Knowlton, you outlined the kind of the plan around vaccinations and how that, so can you just summarize again what is the plan in terms of, we said that we will have a capability to be able to do vaccinations on site. Any inkling or update? Obviously, we have to wait until we hear from the health department in terms of when vaccines are available, but can you expound a little bit further on what that will look like? So once we hear, how quickly can we turn around those plans to get folks vaccinated in the buildings?
So we're on standby effectively, and we've tentatively identified probably both high schools and a couple of junior high schools to do this at. We've also mentioned to both high school and the two high schools and the junior high school, kind of be on standby. We could have very, very little notice in terms of when this could happen. So, I just want to be realistic about so many unknowns relative to the supply chain involving the actual vaccinations. There's there's a lot of characters involved, and there's a lot of channels through which these, products are delivered to different entities. And so, to our understanding, it essentially goes to the state, which goes to the county, which then gets distributed to partners or providers that actually can do the injections for us.
Right.
And so, we've engaged in dialogue and conversations with partners, with providers, with people that are possibly in a position, for example, Jewel Osco Pharmacy, in a position to deploy and basically establish a clinic for us locally. And so they will very honestly tell you that they don't know how much or when they are receiving. So they don't have a lot of direct control. We're communicating with everybody's involved with this. We're communicating with the Regional Office of Ed, DuPage County Health Department, and then the two providers that we have existing relationships with. And so everybody's, kind of ready and waiting. Unfortunately, very, very hard to predict the when part. That's why I reinforce, reach out, go through other channels. Don't just solely wait for this to happen here. If you're in 1B, I would go ahead and proceed as though there's a lot of uncertainty. And so...
So I'll only add that we have already collected from our staff who's interested in wants to have this done, so that we have that data in terms of being able to do it. We have to be thoughtful about how it's distributed. For example, we would want to be cautious about vaccinating an entire staff at the same day, simply because there are some side effects to this for some people.
Understood.
And we would want to ensure that we don't put a whole staff, in a situation, that we have to respond to differently. But we are ready. But again, the reality check is there are 270,000 individuals in DuPage County, 270,000 plus, eligible under 1B. Okay. What we know also is the county, based on the amount of doses that they're getting, have not fulfilled all of 1A just yet. Right. And so that's where right now it appears and seems a little inconsistent in terms of how the vaccine's being distributed, because once they hit like a local pharmacy, for example, they may not have anybody in their 1A group that they need to vaccinate it, so they can go into 1B, right? And so we feel that we are ready to go. And if we were to be called and said that we have a vaccine, we have X hundred doses available for you, can you have, we would be. We're in that point.
So we have to your point, we have the list of the staff that's interested. Is there a priority order, or is it just kind of in pools more? Or, I guess just to summarize, you have a detailed plan that says, okay, if we get a call, says you have 100,
we will continue to refine priority within.
Got it.
But we're not going to turn down vaccines that become available to us.
Understood. Okay. Thank you. That's helpful.
Okay, now we will conclude the Return to Learn. Okay, so we will move on to item 7.03, President's Report. At this point in the agenda, we just want to take a moment to update our community on our efforts to appoint a new Board of Education member. The Illinois School Code directs the Board of Education to proceed to fill a Board of Education vacancy within 60 days of the vacancy occurring. No process is specified for the manner in which the vacancy is to be filled, and the process is left up to the board to decide. The Illinois Open Meetings Act does allow the board to deliberate on the choice in closed session, with the decision to be made in open session. As is specified in our Board of Education Policy 2.70, in previous Board of Education vacancies, District 203 has invited any interested members of the community who are interested in filling the vacancy to submit their interest in... Oh, I'm so sorry. Do you want me to start over? Okay. So I'll go back to the beginning of that paragraph. As specified in Board of Education Policy 2.70, in previous Board of Education vacancies, District 203 has invited any interested members of the community who are interested in filling the vacancy to submit their interest in writing, along with a statement of their qualifications. The board has then met in closed session to interview candidates and to subsequently select the candidate to fill the vacancy. In order to fully inform the public, we have posted on our website the announcement of the vacancy. It is our intention to begin interviews the week of February 8th. We will continue to update the timeline for filling the vacancy on our website as soon as interviews can be scheduled so that the public can be informed of the timeline for the process. As we have stated in our announcement regarding the opening, it's the board's intention to appoint a new member at our meeting on March 1st. However, the timeline is subject to change based on the time it takes to conduct our selection process. Okay, that concludes the president's report. So then I will move on to item 7.04, Board of Education reports. Do I have any Board of Education reports this evening? Okay, so then we will move on to discussion without action, and that is item 8.01, general and optional fees.
Annually, the Board of Education must approve all school fees provided for you in board docs for the proposed listing of general and participation fees, including a multi-year history as a reference for you. Approval of the fees will be requested at the February 16th Board of Education meeting. I'd like to ask Mike Francis if you have any additional information to share at this time.
No, just that there are no new or general or participation fees listed on the schedule, nor are there any proposed changes to the current amounts.
Okay, thank you for that review. Questions from the board with regard to the fees? And I know that I will note for everyone that we have coming up under discussion with action a refund of the 2020-2021 general fees. So the way that that will work is that we will impose these fees. However, then we, further down on our agenda, we will take action that will refund this year's fee, which will form a credit. Okay. So with that being said, questions from the board? Okay. Oh, wait, sorry. Donna?
Okay, so we're currently looking at the optional fees for this year and considering which, if any of those, we can refund or we can credit. That's correct, right? So I guess I'd like to understand how much of those optional fees from this year are going to be refunded. I know we're still looking at that, so I guess can we get that at another meeting? I just want to understand.
Yeah, we should be able to update the board at the next board meeting as to what in addition to, if the board approves the credit for the general fee, as we're recommending tonight, what the additional fees that will be reimbursed for any, say, courses that didn't use materials. There will be an additional process that we're also going through together. At the same time, once the board approves this, the general fee refund, we'll be doing a one-time credit or a combined credit to any eligible accounts at that time. We'll give you an idea of what that is at the next board meeting.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so to reiterate, we're going to take action a little bit farther down with regard to the credit, and then you will also, by next board meeting, tell us kind of what your sense is as to the rest of the fees and how that will be combined also as a credit.
That's correct. Okay. And it's very similar to what we did last spring when we provided credits for course fees also.
Great. Okay, so I don't see any additional questions with regard to the general and optional fees. And so if individuals have questions, this is just discussion without action. So you can send those questions. We can answer those questions at our next board meeting when we have this scheduled for action. All right, so we'll move on to item 8.02, high school course fees.
Okay, additionally, annually, the Board of Education approves high school course fees. They're presented this evening for discussion without action. We'll be asking for approval of the fees at the February 16th Board of Education meeting. Ask Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education, Stephanie Posey, if there's any additional information you have to share at this time, and we'll be prepared to answer your questions.
No, thank you. I believe you have the document, and I would just say that there were very few changes. There was some alignment between both high schools, which is a good thing, and then some reduction in fees as well because of a lack of supply usage.
Okay, great. Thank you. Questions from the board regarding the high school course fees? Okay, so I don't see any questions, but if the board has any additional questions, those will be up for action at the next board meeting, and we can answer any questions at our next board meeting. Okay, so we'll move on to item 8.03, Career 203 update.
Great, and I'm going to invite our Director of Career 203, Director of Human Resources, Brian Valek, to come forward to update the Board of Education. As required by our collective bargaining agreement with the Naperville Unit Education Association, annually, a joint team of administrators and NUEA members review Career 203 to provide any recommendations for updates or changes to the Board of Education. And this evening, Mr. Valek is going to share with you the work of the committee, and we'd be asking for approval at the February 16th meeting. Mr. Valek.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to discuss Career 203. As you note from tonight's presentation, the design of the program has been flexible enough to ensure that timely and relevant professional development for our staff has continued despite the challenges posed by the pandemic. Next slide. In tonight's presentation, I plan to review the cornerstones of the Career 203 program, provide an update on the performance of Career 203, and present the Career 203 Assessment Committee's recommended change, the 2021-2022 Career 203 Professional Growth Guide. Next slide, please. As you may recall, Career 203 is Naperville Community School District's professional growth model created to reward educators for participating in relevant and rigorous educational opportunities that fulfill the evolving needs of the district students. Through negotiations in 2010, it replaced a graduate credit system that both the association and administration recognized was not meeting the needs of the district. This graph represents the trend of bricks earned by district staff over the past 7 years. A brick can be thought of as a unit of completed professional growth experience. Bricks are subject to the review of the Career 203 Director for approval. Each brick on the Career 203 model is compensated by points or one-time payments. Points advance educators in the salary scale and are earned by completing bricks that result in a fundamental change of an educator's practice that leads to increases in student learning. Educators earn a one-time payment by completing a brick for which the current knowledge and skills are extended and refined. In the 1920 school year, 1,112 bricks were completed, down approximately 22% from the previous year. This decrease may reflect some reduced availability of learning opportunities as a result of the pandemic. Fewer bricks offered for payment reflects that not as many of these offerings were planned for the previous school year, or opportunities to provide some topics were placed on hold to help staff ready for online learning. Next slide, please. In our most recent year, there was an increase in the proportion of points earned in Career 203 through district-provided courses, but submissions from universities and outside institutions still comprise the greatest component of staff professional learning. A component of each reflection submitted by staff has them identify the unifying focus of the coursework completed. This EdWordle represents a download of the terms used in the question about the focus of the brick. As you may recall, an EdWordle tallies the frequency of terms and represents them in a cloud to demonstrate how often the words occur. The greater the size of the word in the cloud, the more frequent a word appears in responses. As a result, you can see that staff selected professional development greatly focused on terms related to the cultural, diversity, instructional, inclusion, and health needs of our students. Several professional learning opportunities were designed by district leaders to be responsive to the needs of our students and staff in the past year. Dr. Rakita Leaks partnered with Dr. Goldie Muhammad to apply the principles of the text Cultivating Genius in order to implement a literacy curriculum that utilizes the 4-layered equity framework to provide access, representation, and meaningful participation for all students. Nearly 30 elementary teachers who participated will develop an action plan to employ historically responsive text and lesson plans in the classroom. Learning support coaches Noor Shamas and Alex Morrow are leading a group of approximately 50 educators through the Resilient Learner, a year-long exploration of the dispositions and behaviors that help educators foster a school environment that is more responsive to the social and emotional needs of students, families, and colleagues. And 54 of our math teachers in grades 1 through 5 participated in Foundations of Fractions to provide a deeper dive into the 6 major conceptual areas tackled with elementary students. Next slide, please. Career 203 has supported the work of learning services to augment the effectiveness of our staff teaching in online environments. In the past year, 285 educators have participated in district-led professional development to augment these tools. This graph shows the distribution of training across the different levels of schools. The slices of the pie show the proportion of educators per level who participated in this additional training. Next slide, thank you. Future opportunities for Career 203 to support the work of our staff will address the efficacy of high school staff to go deeper in their learning about the 5 pillars of success from our district's equity plan in order to increase capacity in cultural responsiveness, inclusiveness, and response to student trauma. Next, I'd like to talk to you about the work of our committee earlier last month. On January 12th, a committee of NUA members and district administrators met to review the performance of Career 203 and consider a request to clarify language. We pretty much had one area of focus this year, and this area of focus was National Board Certification of Teachers. As you may recall, the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards, NBPTS, created a certification system for teachers in 1987 with a mission for maintaining high and rigorous standards for what accomplished teachers should know and be able to do. Presently, 7 of our District 203 teachers hold National Board status, with at least 4 more earning the certification this school year. And the reason I say at least 4 more is that National Board, like other organizations, has been delayed by the pandemic, so we may have more than 4 teachers who are in the status. We'll find out later this spring. Nationally, approximately 91,000 teachers hold the certification. District 203 has also offered a formal, yet optional cohort to help candidates through the process while capitalizing on the opportunity to collaborate with their peers. When Career 203 was developed in 2012, a National Board Certified Teacher brick was created to reward teachers who successfully attained National Board certification. These teachers earn 60 points plus an additional $1,500 per year for the remaining 9 years the certification is active. It is within this context to award 60 career points to all participants in the National Board Certification cohort through District 203 that we've discussed the proposal. On the next slide, you'll see how we've identified what those changes would look like. Our district's National Board Certified Teacher cohort offers a rigorous preparation for staff who plan on submitting an application. So those who participate in the 2 years are required to attend 24 sessions during those 2 years. They also submit 200 to 300 hours of independent work during this time, identifying artifacts and reflections and things like that. The formal artifacts and reflections provide evidence of their own teacher growth. District 203 does not control the outcome of National Board scoring, thus there is no guarantee that any teacher who participates in our cohort earns National Board certification. This proposal would ensure all cohort participants would be rewarded for devoting their time to this 2-year professional development activity. And at this time, I can answer any questions members of the Board of Education have.
Thank you so much for that review of Career 203. Questions from the Board of Education? Donna.
Okay. So the one question that I have is that we have 2 slides, the one that has the online blended learning and then the other one with the diversity leaders and learners. I just want to make sure from past history of what I remember hearing about that these are all additional to, or in addition to, in addition to all the professional development that we've done for all the staff in those areas, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So Career 203 is really supporting the work of learning services as well as the work of Dr. Leeks with the diversity and inclusion. So to some degree, we're somewhat the mechanism that's delivered to our staff.
Okay, so maybe it's a different, I just want to make sure. I understand that this is Career 203, but we've also have done professional development on online and blended learning and diversity for all staff. Is that correct?
Yeah, so what we do is when we sit down and make our professional learning plan for the whole year, we have a conversation of what is all staff, what is required, and we always align that to the goals and mission of our district. And so what is all staff going to receive in the areas, like right now of online and blended? What are they all going to receive when we talk through equity and our equity plan? So there's that common piece for everybody. What Career 203 then, the way we use that is what goes above and beyond. So I'll give you a little bit of an example when we talk about the high school equity plan that's aligned to the or that we're going to roll out the high school. We have 3 different areas. 2 that Career 203 will fund. And the first step is, what is everybody going to engage in? Because we have to say, what will all staff have in order to move practice? Then we're going to have a Career 203 opportunity for what are some staff that if they want to engage in 20 hours, they want to do a book study, they want to collaborate with their peers, we're going to have some targeted PL. And then we'll have a larger brick through Career 203 again that will be reserved for leaders. Who wants to lead the work, who wants to research the work, and then who wants to develop professional learning for their peers. So we always start with what does everyone have to have that's connected to our district goals for the year.
Okay, that helps me a lot, because when I looked at the online and blended learning, the percentage of the teachers that are taking that, I was a little concerned, but then I took a step back and I thought to myself, oh, no, these are the percentages that are going above and beyond all the professional learning that we've provided in this area previously, which is then super exciting to look at this slide that way. So, okay.
Right. So one thing that we do, and Brian's been a big help with this, especially this year, is when we think about when we brought in only online courses, we really asked educators, and that was at the high school level first, who's interested in teaching these courses? So if they were interested in teaching the courses, we worked with Career 203 to say, we need professional learning targeted to increase their capacity to teach that. And so it wasn't all staff, because not all staff taught those courses.
Right.
Same thing with blended learning. We have what everybody got with our digital initiative rollout, and then what did our blended learning teachers that came up and said, you know what, I would like to teach a blended class because I'm ready for that. Now we gave them Career 203 compensation with different learning.
Okay, and I can just say that the blended learning classes that my own students have experienced have been phenomenal in preparing them for other classes, and as far as for college, and seeing that the flexibility to be able to have the support of the teacher, the contact with the teacher, but then to have their own time to work within, their own flexibility was critical and paramount to them. So thank you for that, because I know that's a huge point for their continued learning, their lifelong learning, which is part of our mission. So, yep, that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any additional questions from the board, so I just have a compliment. I know that this program has been going for a while, and we don't always think about the real unique nature of it, but I am so appreciative of Career 203 and its ability to really help our educators zero in on the areas where they're interested, and also to tap our own educators with their experience. I particularly want to compliment the Cultivating Genius. I know, Dr. Leeks, I don't know if you want to say anything about it, but I know just from our Diversity Advisory Committee just how often we hear from teachers how much they've gained from that. So thank you for the development of these courses, and just I think they are really meeting the needs that our teachers have for that additional learning. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say on how well that's been embraced, but.
Thank you for the acknowledgement about the course. And yes, I've received a lot of feedback from staff who had the opportunity to participate in those types of courses. And there is a significant amount of interest in furthering, developing their capacity around culture responsive teaching, and specifically the book Cultivating Genius. And so we will be offering that course again in the spring so that we can reach additional staff.
Thank you for your work. Thank you. Okay, I don't see any additional questions, so we will go on to our next point on the agenda.
Thank you.
Yep. And that would be discussion with action. So we will then move to item 9.01, Summer School 2021.
Okay, in our last Board of Education meeting, Director of Summer School Kevin Wilkevich presented our recommendation for Summer School 2021 to the Board of Education. As a reminder, that presentation, that recommendation just focuses on our traditional annual summer school program. We have talked to the Board of Education about, as we've now shifted into stage 3, have more opportunities for in-person instruction through our hybrid model, the ability to do some additional assessments of our students to determine potential lost learning, gaps in learning. We will be coming to the Board of Education at a future meeting with additional recommendations on top of this, with the idea that through our traditional summer school and additional supports, we're wanting to provide something for every student that wants to take access of it. So, students who may need enrichment or extension, students who need preparation to go to another level, or to make up for lost learning. So that's at a future meeting. This recommendation focused on our traditional annual summer school model. Only new information we have is provided in board docs. It was at the request of the Board of Education to look at multi-year financials. Mr. Wolkevich is here. If there are any additional questions, Mr. Wolkevich or members of Cabinet will be happy to respond. Otherwise, we recommend you approve summer school as presented.
Okay. Thank you for that review. Questions from the board? Okay, I see Donna.
Okay, so I have a few questions. For junior high, some of the courses are intended for 3 weeks, and we're running a 4-week program. So can we talk a little bit about how that time will be utilized and what the, I just noticed in the memo that there was a number of 3-week courses. I think that's because we've changed over the years to providing more, if I'm not correct.
Microphone.
Sorry, so the majority of the courses are 6-week courses, which we're modifying to 4. You're right, there was a couple 3-week courses which were Business Boot Camp and Project Lead the Way. Those courses have a lot of materials and a lot of content that goes with them, and we found that especially with Project Lead the Way, we were cutting things out in order to get it in those 3 weeks. So there's plenty of content for it to stretch to 4.
Okay, and then from what I've read, I think I understand that our goal is to have summer school being in person as much as possible, and then only shifting into a hybrid if we can't get the, I don't know, I want to make sure that I understand that. We're only shifting into a hybrid, right? If we, no? It's all in person, right? Yeah, that's what I thought. That's why I was excited about it. So, but if there's too many sections or, we have an abundance of students, then we would have to shift into, is that correct? I just want to understand that.
I mean, I'll answer from this aspect that depending on our staffing may push us to have to do more live streaming if necessary, but we're hopeful that we'll get enough district staff that, we mentioned, our last meeting, the variety of applicants that we look at for summer positions, but that may be the only case, from that aspect where we would need to live stream.
Yeah, I think our goal is for our students to attend every day and making those class sizes small enough so that they are able to attend every day and we can maintain social distancing. However, we will go to live streaming if we aren't able to do that.
I think it's super exciting that we're trying to get to that point. So thank you for that. I just wanted to make sure I understood it all correctly. My last question is under curriculum development and the expenditures, if there's a $30,000 line item that we have not used in the last 3 years for anything, can we get a little bit of understanding of what that is?
Included in that is the fee that we pay for the SAT prep class, which last year was a little over $15,000. And then also, there's some curriculum work that needs to go in this year in order to take those 6-week classes and get them down to the 4 weeks. So we're looking at doing some of that. We have some new classes that need to be developed as well. There's 3 music classes, new music classes that are being developed, a new digital art class at the junior high level, and then also at the high school, some of those extension classes that we were looking at or talking about at our last meeting as well.
Thank you so much.
Joe.
I'd like to just ask a follow-up on Donna's first question. So it's exciting that we're trying to get in person as much as possible, but is there going to be that online option for families who are not comfortable sending their children back?
Yes, we will continue to offer that as an option. What that looks like will depend on how many students we have. So it might be that they just live stream in, or it might be that we have enough students that we offer an entire section of a course online.
Great. So there will be both on ground and online.
There will continue to be both options, yes.
Great. Thank you.
Paul?
Can we expect to see additional deficit spending for summer school? As I understand it, is not a required program. In years like 2018 and 2019, we saw substantial deficits. Do we need to adjust the tuition, or what's causing that?
Again, I would expect that if we can make the assumption that we return to more of a traditional model like we've had in like the summer of 19 and the summer of 18, I would expect that there will be a Board of Education investment into the summer school itself so that there will continue to be costs. Several years ago, we shifted from a model of must only break even to looking at as a long-term investment into supporting our students and providing additional opportunities for them. So I would expect if everything returns closer to normal, the financials will look more like 18 and 19 than they did for 20. We have talked about, again, we've increased opportunity in enrollment over the past several years by taking a different approach to summer school, and so that we would allow in previous years, which created an equity issue and an access issue, we didn't provide waivers for tuition for students who are eligible for them. We have been doing that, which is part of what the board's investment is in that, to make sure that all students have access to the summer program.
This just was actually occurring to me. I know we've done a lot of great work to partner with wraparound services with regard to the Park District for, students who go and may need a full day of, somewhere, that they would, if their parents are working. Are we still going to be partnering with the Park District?
Yes, the Park District and Champions and the Alive Center.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so good. So we'll still have that wraparound sort of for both junior high and elementary students who are taking advantage. Okay, that's wonderful. This is a question, I apologize, you may not have this information available, but I know that some districts are looking at, for example, what portion of their summer school is credit recovery, and looking at credit recovery, potentially looking at that for maybe a portion of that $5 million that we've been talking about assisting students. What percent of our summer school, learners do you know are credit recovery, or would you know kind of a sense of that, or no?
I would have to go back into the data to look at it.
Yeah, sorry. It was a question that I thought of, and okay. Well, I just want to compliment you. I know that this has been a huge undertaking to look at all of the various aspects of summer learning in, making sure that we do as much as possible for those who want to be in person, but then also offer the choice for remote for our families that are not yet comfortable. I think that's exactly where we want to be. So thank you for all the logistics that you have thought through in terms of making that possible. And again, it's exciting to see the continued new courses and just the way that we're, reinventing to serve students in the ways that we can, and also, wrapping around with things like the Park District to make sure that this is a reality for all students. So I think it's a wonderful investment that we've been making from the school district. And I'm also very excited to see how our new $5 million of courses, whether that's in the summer, whether it's boot camps or whatever, I'm excited to see how they complement our summer school program. Donna.
I just want to comment too that we, having sat here for 8 years, just to seeing and I said this last year, and I guess I just got to keep reminding myself to repeat it, because to see the evolution of where summer school was 8 years ago and to where it is today is phenomenally different. So I thank you to the staff and the administration for making that possible, because we didn't provide transportation in the past. We do that now. We didn't provide a lot of other social service kinds of support that we have available now. There's so much that we've put into summer school to make it more accessible, as Jan said, to our students. But I just think we have to realize how far this has come in 8 years, and so thank you for that.
Okay, I will entertain a motion for the 2021 summer school.
Move to approve item 9.01, summer school 2021.
Second.
A motion is second or heard. Please call the roll, Mrs. Patton.
Leong,
Nay.
Kuzminski,
Aye.
Fitzgerald,
Aye.
Kush,
Aye.
Gerke,
Aye.
Wanke.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes. So we will move on in our agenda to item 9.02, refund of 2020-2021 general fee.
Right. At the January 19th Board of Education meeting, the board approved a resolution to reimburse the community amount of $10 million as a result of a higher than anticipated surplus as a result of fewer expenses during the COVID shutdown. We've reviewed those finances also and looking for ways to pay attention to our taxpayers in the investment that they place into us. In this being the one-time unique ability that we have, we are recommending a one-time reimbursement of the general grade level fees that were paid for the 2020-2021 school year. And the reimbursement will come as a credit to all eligible students. The total fiscal impact of that would be about $1.1 million. I'd ask our Chief Financial Officer, Mike Francis, if you have any additional information to share. Otherwise, we'd recommend that the board approve the FY 2021 general grade level fee reimbursement.
Paul.
Again, I'm very proud to be a part of this refund. I've been working at it for many years, and I would encourage my fellow board members to consider refunding and not charging additional fees in any given year where we have a surplus. In fact, I would encourage the creation of a policy stating that. So thanks to my fellow board members for putting this together and the administration for doing all the paperwork and so forth. I think it's fantastic, and I think this tells our taxpayers that we know we're charging them a lot, and I don't feel the need to double dip onto them. Thank you.
Okay, other comments or questions from the Board of Education? Okay, I'll just express on behalf of the whole board the appreciation of the whole board for the efforts that the administration has undertaken to reprogram those unexpected, lower than usual expenditures into things that have really assisted our taxpayers. We know that our families have undertaken expenses like childcare. They have, done, learning spaces at home. There's been a variety of different expenses that have been a part of this year that aren't normally. So we really appreciate your responsiveness to that, and the whole entire package that you've looked at, both to assist taxpayers, to look at our fees, and to look at those learning needs. We're grateful for all of the parts of utilizing those funds to support our students and to support our families. So thank you for the comprehensive proposal and this portion of it. Any other comments from the board? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve item 9.02, the refund of the 2020-2021 general fees as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second are heard. Please call the roll, Mrs. Patton.
Kush,
Aye.
Fitzgerald,
Aye.
Wanke,
Aye.
Kuzminski,
Aye.
Leong,
Aye.
Gerke.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes. So we will move on in our agenda to item 10, old business, and we do not have any old business this evening. So we'll move on to item 11, new business. And we do not have any new business this evening. So we'll move on to item 12, upcoming events, 12.01, schedule of events.
So I would remind our community, it's not on here, and perhaps Mrs. Patton, we could add the optimistic school community sessions onto our calendar. Oops, excuse me. Just a reminder to consult the district website regarding the availability of the modules as well as the live community engagement sessions. And then I would note that as a result of the President's Day holiday on Monday, February 15th, the next scheduled regular Board of Education meeting will be on February 16th. But as Ms. Fitzgerald noted in the beginning of the meeting, we will add some additional dates on here as a result of the board meeting in closed session for the purpose of selecting a new member.
Okay, great. Thanks for that overview. All right, so we will move on then to item 13, adjournment, and item 13.01, motion to adjourn. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
A motion and a second are heard. Please call the roll, Mrs. Patton.
Gerke,
Aye.
Fitzgerald,
Aye.
Kuzminski,
Aye.
Kush,
Aye.
Wanke,
Aye.
Leong.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes.